I had a sad moment today while doing tutoring. I was looking through my students' notes, and there was this notebook that he had that had a date on it. It was June something of 2019. I looked at it and I just got really sad for a couple of moments because I thought about how normal things were at the time. At the time, if I had gone to their place, we wouldn't be wearing a mask. We wouldn't we'd be washing our hands and all that. And then it dawned on me how far I've come since that time as well, especially with compulsive eating disorder problems. You see, a lot of people have a hard time believe I ever had a binge eating problem because if they watch my YouTube videos or they know me, I wasn't very overweight. Unless you happen to see me during one of my binge attacks, you probably would never believe I had a binge eating disorder. And even if you saw me during one, you probably would have thought it was a very isolated event. See, the problem wasn't that I was eating a large volume of food. The problem was that when I wanted to eat the food, oh my God, it was like an unstoppable force. And it often ripped apart relationships, right? It ripped apart my career. It ripped family bonds together. It ripped my life apart at times, right? I just needed to get to whatever food I wanted to. And I have since more or less corrected it. I wouldn't say 100%. I did have a relapse a couple weeks ago. I'll talk about the relapse in a second. I also learned to speak up for myself as a single guy. I had a problem at previous workplaces where people would ask me to fill in for all sorts of things that were not especially convenient for people with family matters to deal with. I gotta admit, yes, there are certain things that singles are more apt at doing compared to people in a relationship or who have family bonds. But at the same time, it's not 100%, right? There are things that single people would love to do more so than people in a committed relationship. I wish it went both directions, right? Let me give you an example. Last summer, when we had started to reopen from COVID-19, one of my colleagues needed to take care of her sister and her brother-in-law who were dealing with COVID-19. She needed to take care of their kids, I think. And I ended up giving her a bunch of my vacation time so she could take care of their kids. Now, I gave it to her with the idea that I might need a favor from her in the future. But you know what happened? She became even more distant from me because she felt like she owed a favor and she could never return it. And I actually felt like it worked against me. I was hoping that she would, at the time, the most important thing in my life was being accepted for being single. And I was hoping that she would see it that way as well. Maybe next time I want to go do something that singles love to do, right? I especially love, maybe not so much during the pandemic anymore, but during more normal times, I used to love going to board game tournaments, right? Backgammon. Some of them are in other towns, right? I live in Seattle. I used to routinely go to Portland or sometimes San Francisco for a backgammon tournament. And a lot of times, it doesn't get very well received by my colleagues, right? I was hoping that I help her for being a family person. She's going to acknowledge that singles have their own desires as well. But it didn't turn out that way. We became even more distant after I gave the vacation time to her. Probably because she felt like she owed me a favor and she couldn't return it, right? And she eventually left our organization. And I have learned to speak up a little bit more when I want to leave work on time, right? With my tutoring clients, for example. I used to be very shy about when I could leave, right? I would do a tutoring session. I remember I had one kid that I was tutoring for 2 hours, but in reality, I was often going 2 hours, 10 minutes, 2 hours, 20 minutes. Towards the end of our time together, I was routinely going closer to 3 hours than to 2. And I always felt like, dude, can I say I want to leave right now? It was 6 to 8 p.m. if I remember correctly. It would be 8:20, and I would be questioning myself whether or not it would be a good time to leave. Like, what excuse am I going to give him? I remember I used to love it if I had a stargazing event that night, right? If I had a lunar eclipse I wanted to see, oh my God, I need to go see the lunar eclipse. It was very easy to blurt out, right? Just wanting to go home for the sake of wanting to go home. I used to have trouble with that, right? And I remember getting really excited to do our stargazing events because he followed them. I was tutoring him in physics, so he knew about those stargazing events. And if there was an event I wanted to see at 11 o'clock and I had to be in Ellensburg and I wanted to leave at 8, that would make perfect sense, right? And I used to, that's how crazy it got in terms of, I used to schedule tutoring on stargazing nights just for that purpose, if you could believe it. Because I had a hard time saying it's time to go when there was nothing to go to, at least in his mind. That's the problem I ran into. But I've been learning to speak up about that. 2 years ago, that was very challenging. Today, it's very easy to do. And so I told my student, wow, how far we've come. He thought I was talking about the pandemic, and I said, no, how far I've come in my own life. And I asked him if he was making any New Year's resolutions. He wants to keep better notes. I mean, his notes are very good, but he wants to do even better. He says he often loses notes. I mean, he kept something from 2 years ago, and he's complaining about he's losing notes. He can't find his notes and all that, which is good. And I told him that COVID was a very nice fresh start for me, and for him, reopening could be the best fresh start he ever gets. And I jokingly said that, back in 1 BC, before COVID, right, i.e. 2019, I used to have this binge eating problem. So in 1 AD, now, sometimes I'll think about food during a tutoring session, but it'll be a passing thought, right? It won't be, oh my God, I can't focus on my tutoring anymore, right? And so, how much a difference to 1 BC before COVID and 1 AD after disaster, right, has been for me. Anyways, I actually went on my first solo sexual date in 10 BC, but I really didn't speak out for myself as being a solo sexual until 1 AD. Thanks for watching.